Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Road to the Blue Mat, presented by Rojo Go Vacation Rentals. You're looking to vacation up around Northeast Alabama, whether it's in Gadsden, right up here in Gunnersville, where we are, anywhere up around Northeast Alabama. Check out Rojo Go Vacation Rentals. They will point you in the right direction, and we appreciate their support right here with Average Joe Sports Talk for high school athletics, mainly high school football, which is what we will be talking about tonight. Week 6, Bo. We're about to get right back into some region matchups and a lot of big-time region games. Some of these will pretty much be determining the region champion with some of these undefeated matchups, and also got some of these matchups that are really kind of determine who's going to end up with that 2 seed, who's going to end up with that 3 seed traveling, which we see every year becomes more and more important, being at home and playing home playoff games.
That's the ultimate goal every season, is to host in the playoffs. I mean, if you can host, whether it be first or second seed, it doesn't matter. Guarantee that first round host. I mean, that's what you're looking for. That's what you're fighting for. Matter of fact, and we're going to kick this thing off with 2 teams that are undefeated in region play right now, which is Decatur Heritage traveling to Appalachian. You know, with the news that came down about Coosa Christian, that gave Decatur Heritage that win. So now they're 3-0, 4-1 overall, and then Appalachian's 2-0 in region, 4-1 overall. So this essentially, minus some crazy stuff, is going to be for that region championship. And we're talking about the region that has Coosa Christian and Cedar Bluff and those guys all in this region. But tales of 2 different stories right here. Appalachian quietly has been doing this behind the scenes. Not a lot of people have been talking about them, but there is without a doubt something to be said. If you're 4-1, 2-0 in the region, you're doing something right. All right. So if you flip that thing over and look at Decatur Heritage, they started out on fire. Has one of the best running backs. Nikita Stover's doing a fantastic job there. They had the big loss at Coosa Christian that was eradicated by the AHSAA. So now this essentially is a region championship game early in the season, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's going to be a big one. And Appalachian's had a really good year, and they've got a good group coming through. I mean, 1A baseball state champions, and then now quietly right here sitting at 4-1.
That's right.
On the football season, 2-0 in their region. And,
that's right.
Really starting to pick things up from an athletic standpoint over there at Appalachian High School. Dadeville will be traveling to Beulah. I'll have this game on Friday night. You know, for Dadeville, it's kind of been a disappointing year for them so far, coming off of an undefeated regular season. Last year, they lost to BB Comer and played them as well as really anybody's played BB Comer this season, 35-21. But losing to Walter Welborn, that was their first region loss that they've had in 2 years in this region. They went undefeated in this region last year. They came up to Walter Welborn. Me and you had that game, and they pretty much handled Walter Welborn that night outside of a kind of a hot start that Walter Welborn had. But they fought to Walter Welborn 21-12 in their last game. They had a bye week. Dadeville's got a weird schedule this year. They're only playing 8 regular season games. They had a canceled game with Reeltown, and then lost a game with Notasulga. They only signed a 1-year contract. Notasulga decided to play Pike Lib last week instead of Dadeville. Dadeville couldn't find another opponent. And so really they lost 2 non-region games, which kind of hurts this team. You know, I mean, you need games to gain experience. And now losing the Reeltown game may not have been a bad thing for Dadeville.
That may have been a good thing they didn't play Reeltown.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk about them in a little bit.
So, but interesting matchup here with Beulah. Beulah beat Sachs, which, you know, for them was really, really good. They got beat 60-34 by Walter Welborn, but was in that ball game for a little bit until Welborn really pulled away late. It's just kind of been an up and down year for Beulah. They opened up the year with a win over Abbeville. They lost 14-12 to Lochapoka, who's a really, really good team there, and 1A, but it's a 1A opponent. And so up and down year. It's going to be interesting to see how Dadeville handles going on the road, but it's a big-time game for Dadeville because they're still looking to set up a matchup potentially with Randolph County. If Randolph County could beat Walter Welborn and then Dadeville go beat Randolph County, all of a sudden you got a tiebreaker for that number 1 spot. Or if Walter Welborn ends up beating Randolph County, they'd be playing Randolph County at the end of the year for that 2 seed or 3 seed in the region. So still a lot in front of Dadeville, and going to be interesting to see how they handle their season really going forward after kind of a disappointing start to this year. Hale County is going to be traveling to Bibb County, and this is a big-time game here for Coach Ryan Locke and his group at Hale County. He's done a really good job. You can tell, I think, that this team's taken strides here in year 2 under Coach Locke, and almost came back and beat Northside after falling behind 21-0 at halftime. They ended up losing that one 28-21. They ended up beating Greensboro 44-0. Had a tough one with Montevallo as Montevallo got them 33-21. They beat Holt 41-0 and then lost to a really good American Christian team 29-6. They now get Bibb County, who had a very emotional game this past week. They go all the way down to Andalusia. They take on the defending 4A state champs. They lose their first game of the season. could be an opportunity for Coach Locke and company to really kind of walk into Bibb County and make some noise this week and possibly get a Bibb County team that's licking their wounds. But for Bibb County, they competed really, really well with Andalusia this past week, and I think kind of inserted their name into the conversation of one of those teams from the 4A South that can really kind of compete going forward for a state championship, and they would love nothing more than to get a rematch with Andalusia on down the line. Susan Moore will be traveling to Brindley Mountain, and look, you know, no secret about it, Brindley Mountain hadn't had a very successful year this year. For Susan Moore, you're having a good year. 4-2, you're 3-0 in the region. This is where you got to go in and go take care of business. And if you want to be looked at as one of those elite teams, one of those teams that we talk about, hey, they can go make some noise and go compete for something in the postseason, you got to go take care of business in this game. Brindley Mountain has been outscored 214-24 this season. So for Susan Moore, go do what you've been doing all season. Go take care of business, and you know, show everybody with a good result that you're one of those teams that everybody should be looking out for here towards the end of the year.
Next game is going to bring us to Valley Head. They are traveling to Cedar Bluff. Valley Head's 3-2, 1-1 in the region this year. Cedar Bluff is 3-3 overall, 1-2 in the region this year. Interesting game, Caleb, because last week, anytime there's a good coach, you're supposed to jump up there in that first year, beat everybody you're supposed to beat, jump up there and beat somebody on paper you're not supposed to beat. And to me, it seems like Coach Crane got that signature win last week by defeating Spring Garden. That was a monumental win for Coach Crane to beat Spring Garden last week 7-6. And you talk about a defensive slugfest dogfight. That's what that is. That's a good old-fashioned high school football game right there. To grit that one out and get that win for Coach Crane meant the world to that program with him taking over. You know, Valley Head's been a team of up and downs this year. You know, Valley Head lost 15-0 in North Sand. Then they beat Section 56-0. Then they turned around and lost to Decatur Heritage, who we mentioned earlier, 34-12. But then they beat Ider 61-14. So, and then they got the forfeit win by Coosa Christian in a game they technically lost, but they got the forfeit win. So they've been up and down this season. This one right here is going to mean a lot in that region for region seeding, and because, you know, that region, technically, we talked about Decatur Heritage and Appalachian being that region's championship game. Well, you can still host. You can still host. One of these two teams can still host. Mathematically, everybody still, but we're talking about realistically.
Yeah.
You can still host. So this is a big, big game for both of those teams right there. Our next game is going to be Shades Valley is traveling to our good friend George Bate in Center Point. You know, Shades Valley is 3-2, 1-1 on the season. George Bates, again, quietly having another good year at Center Point. He's 4-2, 1-2 in the region. The thing about George Bates is, you know, when they moved up from 5 to 6A, everybody was like, you know, they're not going to be able to compete. They're not going to do that. They finished second in that region last year, and this year they're 1-2 in the region, but they're having an overall good season. You know, Center Point started out, and they beat the team out of Mississippi, Tylertown, Mississippi, 28-18. Then they turned around and beat Aliceville 22-14. Then Huffman 58-0. Poor Huffman, man. They still haven't scored.
Yeah, I don't think they scored a point in 6 games.
Yeah, in 6 games. I think it's like, I don't know, it's like 300 and, I don't know, something to nothing throughout the season. I don't want to get off on that, but I mean, that's a tough way.
No, but it's weird at Huffman because we see them compete in basketball year in and year out for state championships, so we know that there's some talent there.
Dominant.
It's just, you got to get them going in the right direction. And what Coach Smith had done the last couple of years before he chose to leave and go to Talladega, I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
Pretty remarkable considering what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
You know, it's always what happens next, and what's happened next is something that you do not want to look at. It's a horror film right now. But then, you know, they lost. They turned around and they lost to Pell City.
Yeah.
And that was Pell City's win, 39-14. And then everybody is losing to Fairfield this year. You know, I mean to Clay Chalkville, 39-14, but then beat Fairfield 42-20. So, to me, this is another one of those games. It's a I don't want to call it a must win, but if you look at the region records, you got one that's 500, one that's one game below 500. Both of these programs need this win big time.
Yeah.
Next game, this is a huge one, Caleb. Valley is traveling to Central Clay. You know, last week we got to go see Danny Horn and company at Alexandria. Got to talk to Coach Horn and the guys, and they were every bit the part last week. You know, they handled everything with class. You know, they got up on Alexandria. He pulls his guys out. He had a tremendous amount of respect for Alexandria. So all he told me in the pregame, I said, Coach, what do you think? He said, they're still Alexandria. We're still in Death Valley. You don't ever take them for granted, I can tell you that. That's what come out of his mouth when he was talking to me. And I understand where he's coming from, because we live in a society today where everything's played and won on paper. People look at these stats and scores and lines, and they already predict the game.
Yeah.
But they're not the ones out there sweating and having to execute. So, but if you look at Valley, they lost that first game to Hanley, which just about everybody's losing to Hanley. But then listen to this. They beat Lynette 41-14, Beauregard 21-14 in overtime, beat Sylacauga 35-10, beat Russell County 40-14. Now, that's good and great and all, but this Central Clay team has outscored their opponents 198-45. They're giving up less than 10 points per game, and they're running the ball at 300 and something yards per game. That is a recipe for beatdowns. So can they withstand this pressure, and what Clay does on both sides of the ball up front will be the tale of the tape in that game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, as great as the Valley 4-game win streak is, it's going to be a way bigger step up in competition.
I bet they would trade all 4 of those wins for a win right here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That'd be a huge win for Valley. And a place that's about to be combining with Lafayette and is going to be a power. And it looks like they're going to be staying right there at 6A too. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So Dothan will be traveling to Phoenix City. This is a very, very big football game in our state. For Dothan, they've got a chance. Their only loss of the year is to Auburn High. They lost in overtime to Auburn High. And they got them kind of the week after Auburn had lost their quarterback. And so Auburn, they played 4 different quarterbacks in the game. They put Ian Nation back there and let him run some Wildcat and do some stuff. And so Dothan, I think, just wasn't really prepared for what Auburn was going to bring to them offensively that night. Outside of that, Dothan's taking care of business this year. They beat a really good Carroll team who beat Charles Henderson this year, beat them 59-14, beat Percy Julian, which used to be Robert E. Lee, 42-6. Beat Prattville 59-24, Smith Station 66-0, and then they went down to Mobile to an undefeated Baker and beat them 35-14 last week. This is a Dothan team that's really getting moving in the right direction.
We just talked about Baker with Corey on our Saturday show 2 weeks ago about how they've turned the channel and they're not just known for basketball no more. So that was a huge win right there.
Yeah, no doubt. But they're going to get a Phoenix City team that's pretty good this year. They're 5-0,
real good.
4-0 in the region, and they beat Hewitt 48-24. That's what really turned a lot of heads because Hewitt's expected to be pretty good this year, and they've got a big one coming up this week as well. They beat Smith Station 51-0. That game was 44-0 at halftime, and Phoenix City kind of took the starters out, I think, and really relaxed in the second half. They beat a really good Enterprise team. It's an Enterprise team that had just beaten Auburn. They beat them 48-7. They beat Opelika 28-18. Opelika's got a big one that we'll talk about coming up later on this week as well. And Opelika's good this year. You know, they've just had, they've played a tough schedule. You look at their losses this year, it's been to some pretty good football teams. And then Phoenix City beat Jag 55-0 in their last game. Jag is Jeff Davis High School down in Montgomery is what it used to be. So this is a huge football game coming up on Friday night, and one that if Dothan can get a win, it's going to really change the outlook of what 7A is. There's some big, we're going to talk about another one later that Reggie's going to talk about, but 7A could really get shaken up this week with some big upsets.
I'm ready for it to
jostle
around a little bit.
As a fan of it, and we respect all the programs, but as a fan of high school football here in Alabama, it would be great to see some of these teams like a Dothan, like a Hewitt, like some of these really pop up and get some big wins this week.
Well, I'm about to tell you one of those dark horses right now. We're about to talk about them. And they're slowly, steadily getting to where they're not a dark horse. They're getting to where they're turning that corner, and that's Vestavia. Ever since they hired Robert Evans there, they have done nothing but ascend, my friend. And Caleb did his coach's show last year. We went and sat in with him several times, went to a game or two, and I'm just going to tell you, it's old-fashioned, straight-ahead football. These guys are coached well. They perform well. If he had some of the talent that some of these other schools had, they would be the talk of the state right now. The no fear of Hoover, the no fear of Thompson, they don't fear those guys, and that's the first hurdle. If you get past that hurdle, then you're cooking in grease.
And the good news for Vestavia is he's from there. So he's not looking to leave.
Yeah, he's eat up with it. Yeah. He's not going nowhere. Now, there'll be some people come try to lure him away, but Vestavia has a little change in the pocketbook, too.
There may be one right up the road that may come knocking.
Yeah, they may come. They may send a limo.
They make them slam the door.
They're going to come send a limo down. But another conversation for another time, and we didn't name nobody. Just saying. So Vestavia is 4-1, 2-1 overall. Vestavia, they beat Mountain Brook and Chris Yeager 35-10. They beat Homewood 43-0. Then they lost to Thompson in that meaningful game, which was a one-possession game late in the game,
Yeah.
and then kind of got away right there at the end. But then turn around and beat Hoover 26-7, and then beat Spain Park, who's up and coming as well, 26-8. Now they're taking on a Chelsea team that's 2-4, 1-2 in the region. Chelsea, man, they're up against it, buddy.
They are.
I mean,
but there's a chance Chelsea goes back down to 6A next year, and if they do, they're going to really benefit from this
big
move
time.
up.
A la
Yeah.
Gadsden City.
Yeah.
Gadsden City, same thing, same situation. They went down, have really benefited for it. Matter of fact, they went and won the region championship the first year
Yeah.
back down. So for Chelsea in this game right here, you're going to have to play with your hair on fire. You're going to have to hope you get a couple of turnovers, and Vestavia's going to have to play down a little bit for, I think, Chelsea to be in that game.
Benjamin Russell will be traveling to Chilton County on Friday night. For Benjamin Russell, it's been an up and down year. They've won, lost, and you got to break that streak. And it's going to be a tough task this week. Chilton County. Chilton County's also kind of had an up and down year. They're 3-3. They're 1-2 in the region. This is a big game when it comes to playoff implications, in my opinion. If Chilton County loses this one, you go to 1-3 in the region. That's going to make it tough in a region that's also got one less team than most other regions. So.
Right.
For Benjamin Russell, they need
That's
a win
actually
here.
key.
Yeah, and they need a win here because you've still got Pelham. That'll be next Thursday. And then you got Helena on down the line as well. So, and Briarwood, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So, Benjamin Russell still got a tough schedule the rest of the way. This is a very key game for them. They beat Wetumpka 40-19, which, looked like a good win at the time. But now you see Wetumpka's maybe not as good as we all expected going into the year. Lost 30-13 to Coach Horn and Central Clay. They then beat Calera 57-7. And you kind of felt like, hey, maybe they're starting to get things going. They had a bye week, 2 weeks prepare for Homewood, and then they go out there and they get beat 41-21 by Homewood. So that was kind of a letdown. They went down to Smith Station. They were winning that game 34-7, and Smith's kind of making a little bit of a comeback there towards the end last week. But you're going to get a Chilton County team that, really has beaten the teams that they were supposed to beat going into this year and has lost to the teams that a lot of people expected them to. Bibb County, who we talked about earlier, they're a 4A, beat them to start the year 33-21. Then they turned around, they beat Jemison, but they lost 28-10 to Briarwood, lost 37-10 to Helena, and then they've turned around and beaten Calera 37-3 and Tallahassee 28-6, two teams who just aren't having great years this year. So for Chilton County, if they can get a win here, it'd be the biggest win of their season. And like we talked about, one that would go a long way towards them maybe sneaking in and getting that 4th spot in the playoffs out of that region. Southeastern will be traveling to Cleveland. This is very similar to the game I talked about earlier for Southeastern. You got to go take care of business. They're having a really good year. They're 3-1, 3-0 in the region, which is the biggest key of all of them. Their only loss is to Ragland, a really good Ragland team, 13-6, and then beat Gaston, West End, and Holly Pond. And then for Cleveland, they've been outscored 193-60 this year, but they've played some pretty good teams, and, namely Locust Fork, who's a big rivalry for them as well. And then their closest game this year is a 21-16 loss to Pleasant Valley. They've been in some football games, and so for Southeastern, biggest key is you've got to go in, go take care of business, and you can't let this game slip up on you. You can't get caught looking ahead at any of these other teams. You got to be focused on Cleveland. And for Cleveland, look, keep playing hard. Keep finding a way to try to get a win. You've got 5 more games to do so. And they've played hard up to this point, just hasn't turned out great over in the win column. Maybe they can get that turned around. Athens will be traveling to Coleman. Really big football game here up in around the Huntsville area. Athens beat East Limestone 63-14. They beat Bob Jones 35-28, which is a 7A. It's a very good win for Athens. Beat Decatur 44-16, but now they've lost their last 2 games. They lost to a really good Muscle Shoals team, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, 66-28, and then they beat May Jemison 55-27. So, look, this is a really good Athens team. It's a Coleman team that's been up and down. They lost to Mars Hill, who has as good a shot as anybody at 3A, 55-21. They beat Jasper 15-13. They lost 42-0 to Hartselle. They beat Decatur and Lee of Huntsville, and then they lost to Mortimer Jordan 24-20. So, when you look at it for Coleman, outside of Mars Hill being a lower classification, I think Mars Hill may just be a better football team. They've lost to the teams that are kind of just better football teams, and they've beaten the ones that they're a little bit better than. So this will be a huge win for Coleman at home against Athens, who may be a team that is a little bit better than them.
Mars Hill is loaded.
No doubt. Mary G. Montgomery going to be traveling to Davidson. We've talked about Mary G. Montgomery for a while. If you don't know who they are, they're down in Mobile. They're a 7A. They're one of the biggest schools in the state. They haven't been kind of living up to expectations athletically until now. They're 6-0. They're 3-0 in the region down there. They're looking, they've already kind of gotten through the 2 toughest opponents in Baker and Foley in that region down there. So they're kind of in the driver's seat to win that region, and I'm telling you, they're one of the teams in 7A who could pop up and possibly upset Phoenix City, Auburn, one of those two teams who's been making it to the state championship, really over the last 5-6 years. So Mary G. Montgomery, 6-0, 3-0. They're going to Davidson. They should be able to beat Davidson. Davidson beat Hillcrest Evergreen 59-46. They lost 66-28 to Baker, lost 56-14 to Daphne. They then turned around and beat Fairhope 42-10, but they lost to BC Rain 49-35. So they've kind of been up and down. It's a game that Mary G. Montgomery should take care of, but I'm telling you, just keep them in mind. They're a team that can really go make some noise in 7A this year out of the South.
Next game is going to be Aniana traveling to Etowah in a towel at Jim Glover Field. Aniana's 4-2, 2-1. Their only loss was to Cherokee County in a big matchup of last year's semifinal game. Etowah's been a team of up and downs. They're 2-3, but they're 2-1 in the region, Caleb, which is interesting because they still have everything in front of them to play for. Technically, on paper, still alive for a region championship because you do play Cherokee County down the road. So, that's technically on paper still alive. You would say Cherokee's probably in the driver's seat right now, but you would want this thing to go to a three-way tie, and then you have to do tiebreakers, things like that. But before we put the cart in front of the horse, they got to handle business right here at Aniana, or none of that means nothing. Because if they don't get this win against Aniana right here, they're not going to win the region championship. They're not going to host in the first round. Those two things are pretty much out the door if they don't get this win versus Aniana. For Etowah, they lost to Springville out of the gate 28-21, and then they lost to Fort Payne 54-27. Then they beat Asheville 42-13. They lost to Fultondale in just a mind-boggling game 48-9. Then they beat Good Hope 28-21 in overtime. So it's, as we've talked about a lot of teams, it's up and down. It's up and down. They got to find some consistency. Coach Blake Bone, the state champion in baseball, is actually coaching the team right now. He can stabilize that community. He can stabilize this team, and they're looking to do so. But it's tough when you're playing fluff ball. This Aniana team is 4-2 overall in the season. They lost to a very tough Dora team, and they've lost to Cherokee County. Outside of that, they've handled all their business all season. So both of these teams need this region win, but Etowah desperately needs this region win because then they would have the tiebreaker to Aniana out the door. They'd have another region loss, and they still got Cherokee County coming. So pecking order in the playoffs would be Houston would probably be out the door if they can't get this win. Next game is going to be Hazel Green traveling to Gadsden City. Hazel Green is winless on the year. They've just not really gotten it done this year. They've been outscored 192-70, giving up 38.4 points a game. If you give up 38.4 points a game, you're probably not going to win too many football games unless you're just a juggernaut offensively yourself. And unfortunately, they're not. They've only scored 70 in 5 games. So that's not a recipe for success right there. The Gadsden City, coming out of the gate, beat Carver Montgomery in a game that we were at, Reggie was at, and 37-20. Then they turn around and lost to Hewitt-Trussville. There's nothing to hang your hat about. Hewitt-Trussville, I believe, has only got 1 loss in the year, and they're playing in 7A Region 3. And then they beat Buckhorn 49-14. But then the biggest win by far of the year was the Fort Payne win. It was 63-41 at home. Everything worked for Gadsden City at night. They pretty much put themselves firmly in the driver's seat to win that region championship because they're 2-0 in the region after that win against Fort Payne. But then they turn around and lost 31-28 to Hartselle. And then last week didn't have a good showing at Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa. They ended up losing 32-3 in a game where they had opportunities. They was inside the red zone several times, couldn't cash in. They had some turnovers. They had a guy slip and fall down on a man-on-man route on a deep route and gave up a touchdown. Little things like that, but the little things like that will get you beat in the long run. You know what I mean? But they're looking to bounce back right there, and it's going to be a tough sledding for Hazel Green to go into Gadsden City and compete with them.
And Hillcrest Tuscaloosa is a team that can compete with Saraland and come out of the South also. So not a bad loss. I mean, you would like to compete a little better, but
they are.
Go look at their scores. They've given up 3. 0 and 6 to pretty much everybody.
Nobody
scored on them.
Anybody that's going to get in the arena with Saraland has got to be good.
On top of that, Hillcrest 6-0 with their backup quarterback.
Yeah, and they
hadn't even had their starter, and he probably won't be available till like maybe a week before the postseason. So.
I'd love to see them lock up with Saraland. That'd be a fun matchup. And Gadsden City had their chances in that.
That game. For Gadsden City, I think they can look at some things on the film and kind of say, hey, we can be in this mix and we can go compete with a lot of people. And so. Even though you lost, I think there's some good takeaways there for them.
That's right. Next game is going to be Anniston, who's 4-2, 1-1 in the region this year, traveling to Hanley, 5-1, 1-0 in the region. For everybody, this game is on Friday. It's not on Thursday. I believe the historical site had it listed as a Thursday game. It's not. It's actually on Friday for those watching this live right now. So the game will be played on Friday in Hanley, Alabama. I sat in with Rico Jackson today, and I just asked him, man to man, I was like, how's it going? How's the city treating you? Things like that. And he was like, it's good. He said, I'm learning these kids don't quit easily. Last week was a gut check win. They went on the road and beat Piedmont 14-9 in a game that couldn't go their way. They wasn't getting a lot of calls. The penalty number was 14-4. Yeah. They got called 14 times. Piedmont got called 4. A lot of times, coaches and players will lose their mind if stuff like that's going on. But they stayed the course. They won the football game. They got out of there. Gritty win. And this Hanley team, check this out, Caleb. They beat Valley, who we talked about, 22-7. They beat St. James, 55-27. They beat Jacksonville, who's murdering people right now, 32-24. They beat White Plains, 41-0. Then they lost to the old-fashioned Danny Horn Wishbone, 31-6, which is a big loss, but it was a pretty close game right throughout till the end. And then Danny Horned them. But then they turned right back around and beat Lynette, 42-27. So this is a very, very good Hanley team. And in Anniston's behalf, that win last week should springboard it, because the week before they come off that bad loss to Jacksonville, 52-24, in a game that they didn't perform pretty good. But they started the season out and beat Walter Wellborn 38-22. Walter Wellborn looks like they may win that region down there, and you know more about that than I do in that particular region. But then they lost the eventual state champion, or last year's state champion, Andalusia, 39-0. Then turn around and beat Mumford 47-14. So Anniston again is one of these teams that we're seeing this from, which you got a new coach and a lot of new young players. Sometimes things like that just tend to happen.
No doubt. And I got to see them in that game with Piedmont last week, and
there's
a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to build on there. Anniston's got some talent. They got some big old dudes. And I'll tell you this, we're going to talk about Piedmont in a little bit too, but Piedmont fans need to really hold tight with what Coach Jonathan Miller's doing there. They're a young group. It's got
super young,
some really good football players, and they're starting to get better and better, and they competed really well in that game, a game that they really probably should have been. I mean, when you looked at them on the field, Anniston was way bigger than they were up front, and yet Piedmont was able to hold up to them. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Muscle Shoals traveling to Hartselle Friday night. It's one of the biggest games in the state. Muscle Shoals 5-0, 2-0 in that region. Hartselle 5-1, 2-0 in that region. This is pretty much for the region championship there with those two teams. Muscle Shoals beat 7A Bob Jones 48-14 to start the year. They then beat Florence 9-0, who's also a 7A in that same region. Then beat Columbia 42-0, Athens 66-28, and James Clemens, who's another 7A, 42-28. So Muscle Shoals has 3 wins over 7As this year.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then Hartselle lost to Alston to start the year, 7A, 28-17. But since then, they beat Jackson Olin 35-8, Coleman 42-0, Columbia 44-0, Gadsden City 31-28, and a huge win over Oxford this past week, 22-21. Didn't they kick the extra point to tie it, and then Oxford got a penalty, and then they went for 2? Isn't that how that ended up coming about?
Yeah, and
That's what ended up happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Go watch the tape. We don't talk about officials or anything. Just go watch the tape, the 2-point conversion on your own free will, and just you make your own determination. I'll say that.
Well, it was a big win for Hartselle last week over
Major
Oxford.
Win.
Yeah,
and that's a major win.
A lot of momentum now going into this game with Muscle Shoals. So this should be a really big one Friday. And if you're one of those who's sitting around Friday night and you have an FHS network, which I suggest getting, it's worth it for whatever a month to be able to watch anything. This would be a great game to tune into, because there's going to be some hard hitting and a lot of good football being played here between these two teams. Briarwood traveling to Helena, big game in that region that we talked about earlier with Benjamin Russell and Chilton County and
what about
Pelham.
Helena, dude?
Yeah, they're on a mission this year.
Yeah.
Whatever happened last year, Coach Busby's got that locker room fit. Yeah. And look, for Briarwood, they started out the year rough. They lost 31-0 to Clay Chalkville, 37-6 Spain Parks, 2 pretty good football teams though. Since then, they've beat Chilton County 28-10, Pelham 28-21, Oak Mountain 21-0. They've kind of figured some things out. But they're going to have their work cut out for them going to Helena this week. And this is a Helena team that they're not only undefeated right now, they've dominated their way to being undefeated. 50-14 over Chelsea, 55-7 over Buckhorn, 31-17 over a good Homewood team, 37-10 over Chilton County, 35-14 with Pelham, and 49-6 with Jackson Owen. Their closest game's a 21-point win over Pelham.
21-point win is their closest win.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Everybody's talking about all these other teams. I think Coach Busby's okay with that.
That's
They're
good.
talking about all these other teams in 6A, and nobody brings up Helena, but I'm telling you, they got maybe one of the – I mean, they got a top 5 running back in the state in Jordan Washington. They got a lot of other really good players, and,
I think he would beg for it to be like this.
Yeah. So they're still not really getting any attention in the top 10 poll. I mean, it's
good.
I think things are going exactly how Coach Busby wants them to at Helena, but this is going to be a really big football game there. And if they can take care of business here, they're pretty much in the driver's seat to be able to run away with that region. So
we need to get down there and see him soon. No, because we might bring him some bad luck. This next one, man, I'm just going to tell you a couple things about this game. Reeltown, who's 5-0, 3-0 on the year, is at Lynette. In any year, this is going to be a big game. Lynette, 2-4, 1-2 in the region. Reeltown, Coach Matt Johnson. Let me tell you a little bit about Matt Johnson. We've had him on the show before. We did a one-on-one with him. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. He's a man of God. He runs a really good program at Reeltown. A lot of people wrote them off. They just, get them out of here. After that loss to 5 in the state championship game, first of all, it's a milestone to get to a state championship game. Second of all, handle it with class like they did in the way that they lost that game. You didn't hear no crying or whining, nothing from their staff, nothing. They just went back to work. They knew that next year they were going to be down some because they had a young group. Well, now those young guys have grown up. And now a lot of coaches in 2A across the state of Alabama has asked me, have you been there? Have you talked to them? What do they look like? I'm going to go visit Matt Johnson before these playoffs start at some point. I'm just going to take a day off and go down there and visit him and do another one-on-one with him. Listen to this, Caleb. They started off by beating Tallahassee 41-14, then Lynette 41-6, then they beat Goshen 43-18, then Barber County 47-8, then Cleburne County 68-3. They have outscored their opponents 240-49 on the season. Brother, that's domination.
Yeah. And Tallahassee's a 5A. I mean, it's way bigger than that.
Yeah, and look, and destroyed them.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about beat them by 3 scores. It is what it is. Lynette is down by Lynette standings. I mean, you know it as well as I do. They're 2-4, 1-2 overall. I mean, this is going to be tough sledding for Lynette to even compete in this game.
They're down, but I can tell you that you can tell they're getting a little better. They competed really well with Hanley, and I saw them. Dave played them in a jamboree game to start the year. It surprises me that they're sitting at 2-4 because their offensive line. There's some 6A programs that would kill to have the size that Lynette has up front.
Yeah, we know a dominant 7A team that offensive line is smaller than theirs.
Yeah.
We're not going to call no names, but just saying. Next game's going to be Fort Payne at Lee of Huntsville. These two teams mirror each other's record. They're both 3-2, 1-1 in the region. Fort Payne, we had Coach Elmore on the show last week. Business as usual for them last week. They went and beat ARAB, perennial power ARAB in that region, 39-14 in convincing fashion. The thing about Fort Payne is you may beat Fort Payne, but you got to score points to do it.
Yeah.
Because they're going to score points. Listen to this. They put up 51. They put up 51 versus Scottsboro, 54 versus Etowah, 61 versus May Jemison in the game we were at, 63. Let's see, they put up 63. No, they put up 41 against Gadsden City. Very tough defense right there. And in ARAB, they put up 39. So they're going to score points. Lee of Huntsville, a lot of people don't talk about them. But they beat Westminster Christian 44-34. Then they beat Madison Academy 50-26. Hazel Green 46-21. But then lost to May Jemison 19-18. That was a big, big upset for May Jemison. They wasn't scheduled to win that one. And to Coleman 40-7. So my point is, Lee of Huntsville, if you look at who these two teams have played, there's no question Fort Payne's played a much, much tougher schedule.
Yeah.
And the common opponent there is May Jemison.
Yeah.
So if you look what May Jemison with a 61-13, that's the one that jumps off to me, and the biggest differential is they actually beat Lee of Huntsville 19-18. So that's going to be a tough sledding for Lee of Huntsville.
Yeah. My brother coaches at Hazel Green, and we were talking a little bit about it today. He said Fort Payne's going to score some points against Lee.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to score. It wouldn't shock me if Fort Payne gets over 60 in this game here against Lee of Huntsville. It's going to take some turnovers and things like that in order for them not to. Cleveland County traveling to Jacksonville. Look, this is a Cleveland County team who they're 3-2. We just talked about they got beat 68-3 by Reeltown, which is just a shocker. But they're 2-0 in the region, and that's what matters more than anything is the fact that they're right there 2-0 in the region. And if they can get a win over Jacksonville here, they're in the driver's seat to really make some noise in that region.
It's a tall task.
It's going to be a tall task because this is a really good football game or football team here in Jacksonville. And, outside of the one loss to Hanley, they've scored points on everybody this year, and they've been tough to stop. They got a quarterback who's really, really good. And anytime, that's where football's heading. Anytime you have a quarterback who can distribute the football, do the things that he can do, it's going to make you a tough football team. And I think that Hanley game, even though they lost 32-24, I think the fact they got down in that game, came back, got back in the ball game, tied it up at one point, you can kind of look at the last couple of weeks and tell that gave that team a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And they've gone on. They beat Anniston 52-24. They ran away from them in that game, and then they've won 51-0 and 51-6 since then. So getting this game at home is huge for Jacksonville, and if they win this game, they're right there kind of locking up that 2 seed in that region and hoping for a Hanley loss to where they would need 2 Hanley losses in order to get up there. But if they could get them, all of a sudden you're winning the region and hosting in the first.
You never
and
know,
second
a couple
round.
of injuries or something.
So should be an interesting game here between Jacksonville and Cleveland County, and it's a big one for Cleveland County. You win this one, you're going to really turn some heads around the state, especially up here in the northeast part of the state. Mumford traveling to Lincoln. For Lincoln, they're trying to kind of get back going a little bit and, beat Talladega 31-7, beat Asheville 40-26. They lost Southside 29-8, beat Alexandria 24-17, and then lost 28-3 to Moody. They were off last week. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. Mumford's not having a great year from a record standpoint, but they've lost to some pretty good football teams.
Yeah,
Childersburg's a lot better this year, and they've got a huge game coming up with Randolph County. They lost that game 28-22, and then went on and then lost to Anniston the next week, 47-14. They beat Talladega 47-16. A lot of people beating Talladega this year. And then lost 37-21 to Cleveland County, who we just talked about, and then Cherokee County 56-10. A lot of people have lost Cherokee County this year. So Mumford's played a good schedule. It's a game, for Lincoln, we've talked about they're improving. You can tell, you can see it in their football program. They're getting better. This is a game that it may not seem big on the outside, but inside that program, this is a big game for them. You win this game, it's a big step forward. It's a big step towards getting where you guys want to get to as a program. Moves you to 4-2 on the year, 2-2 in the region, and it almost kind of helps kind of lock up the fact that you're probably going to be in the playoffs. Now you're playing for seeding the rest of the way. So a very, very big football game there. And for Mumford, look, you're 1-4, but you're 1-2 in the region, just like Lincoln. A win here goes a long way towards them possibly getting in the playoffs, which ultimately is the goal and everything.
That's
so
a bit of a rivalry game too there.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's a tough game, This next game is going to be Pleasant Valley, who's 4-1, 3-0 in the region, versus Locust Fort, which you talked about earlier. They're killing people this year. They're 6-0, 2-0 in the region. Let me tell you this little fact about Locust Fort. They've outscored their opponents now in the year 321-82. 321-82. Listen to this. Locust Fort beat Appalachian 61-20, a good Appalachian team. I think that's Appalachian's only loss. J.B. Pennington 42-20, Holly Pond 68-28, Cleveland 42-0, Cold Springs 56-8, and then a decent Susan Moore team 52-6. They're not just winning, Caleb. They're dismantling people.
And they're scoring a lot of points.
Yeah, their closest win was Holly. No, let's see. No, it was J.B. Pennington, and they won that one by 22 points. Pleasant Valley was undefeated up until last week, and a kind of a shocker. I thought they possibly could lose that game to Raglan. I didn't know they'd lose it like they did. Brick Boy and I was at the pregame warm-ups and talked to Coach Nix. I took Brick Boy on the tour of their new workout facility over there that they have. We talked to all the coaches actually, and we went down and watched them warm up. Quarterbacks throwing routes. Brick Boy got some good pictures, but he was pretty confident going in that game. I don't know what happened. It's 39-6. That was a statement win for Raglan last week, and they took a big step forward in that region. But they took a big step forward for their program by beating Pleasant Valley like that. Pleasant Valley still remains unbeaten. Locust Fort still remains unbeaten in this region, so this game's massive. Next game's going to bring us to Geraldine, who's 4-1, 2-1 on the year. Their only loss is to Sylvania in a dominant fashion. Sylvania, you got to get hats off to them, but they've got to win over 5. I'll take a win over 5 for a loss of Sylvania if you're a head coach. You got to give up. If you have to give up something, I'll take that, you know. So they still got everything in front of themselves to play for. AHSAA, who's having a miraculous season, considering they was 0-7 to start last year. They're 4-2 and 2-1 in region play. Both of these teams in this game has got to dig deep. This game means so much for region and hosting and everything like that. These two teams, both of them need this win. What's scary to me is how AHSAA bounced back from their first blowout loss of the year. And hopefully it's the last blowout loss of the year to them. But, man, they got beat good last week, 51-6 to a very tough Jacksonville team. But, you know, kudos to them for playing Jacksonville. You're talking about a 4A South team.
Now, there's a lot of people that would be having the type of year AHSAA was having and try to find a way to get out of that game.
Bro, there's no doubt. They'd be trying to schedule Slippery Rock or the Sisters of Mercy or whoever they could get to get out of that game, and would pay a fine to do it.
Yeah.
So kudos to them for playing that game. You find out a lot about yourself in losses like that. So both of these teams need this win. This is going to be a gut check game right there. So I'm going to call that the gut check bowl.
Well, speaking of gut check, it's going to be a big one in 7A down here. And I'm from this area. You know, I grew up in Auburn. There's a lot of big rivalries in the state. This is one of the bigger ones. Auburn at Opelika on Friday night.
Schedules don't tell a story on this one.
No, yeah.
I mean the records.
No, I mean, because Opelika's sitting at 3-3, but you look at their losses, it's Thompson, Phoenix City, and then they went down to Theodore this past week and got beat 10-6 by a Theodore defense who's extremely good. So
put their schedule against almost anybody's in the state.
They've played a tough one, and they've beaten the teams that they needed to beat, you know.
Yep.
And I thought they would compete a little bit better with Thompson, but I think looking back at the game, you could tell they were kind of trying to find their offense a little bit, and I think that they've kind of started to find their offense a little bit more. They're starting to score some more points, even though Theodore was able to hold them to 10 down there in Mobile. Theodore's a different animal. They played an 8-3 game with Spanish Fort. So pretty good defensively there from Theodore. So this is going to be a big game up for Auburn. You know, look, they struggled to score points on Ramsey this past week. Well, Opelika's a step ahead of Ramsey, in my opinion, just from a talent standpoint, from a depth standpoint. You know, Ramsey's, their first 11 are good. Opelika's second 11 are better than Ramsey's second 11, in my opinion, and that's the difference. They've got the depth. You know, when I went down and visited with Coach Etheridge last week, I said, you know, what do you think about Ramsey? He goes, they're good. And then he goes, but Opelika, man, we've already watched a little bit of them. They're really good up front. Man, it's the first thing he brought up. And so, really, really interesting game here because it's one of those, these two communities don't really like each other down there. I mean, it's just the bottom line. There's some of these rivalries you look at and you go, oh, you know, it's friendly. These two communities, you know, we talked about Notisoga and Lochapoka. It's two communities, they get along with each other. They like each other, but that one day they want to, that ain't how it is for Opelika and Auburn. They really want to.
This is more like you and Reggie on Madden.
Yeah,
pure hatred.
Sure, yeah. But no, it's two communities that really don't like each other a lot. And they talk about it a lot. This is a game that they circle. It used to be at the end of the year, and it was huge. You know, you've been to Auburn down there. I've been to Auburn Opelika games where people were standing on the bricks up there on the visitor side to watch the game. I mean, you know, for Auburn Opelika, I mean, you know, before they built the stands on that hill over there, people used to just fill up the hill. You know, if it was at Auburn this week, I mean, there would probably having to be people sit on the hill because the stands would be all the way full.
You played against Opelika.
Yeah. We actually, the new Opelika field, when they finally got turf, the new indoor video board and all that, we actually opened that field up 10 years ago, back in 2013, actually. So
don't give your age out, man.
Hey, well,
you got to keep that hidden.
It's the craziest thing. It's been 10 years, I can tell you that. But look, Opelika is a tough place to play. They've got a really good team. This is going to be a huge game in 7A. Matthew Cherry chimed in. He said Auburn's going to beat Opelika. Look, it won't shock me, Matthew. You know, Auburn's really, really good, and Coach Etheridge has won 5 state championships for a reason. The guy can coach. So, and he's got a great staff as well. It's not just him. I mean, his staff down there is really good. But Coach Speakman over at Opelika, he's got a pretty good staff as well. And I'm just telling you, this is one of those rivalry games. People circle it, and you know, talking about 10 years ago, Opelika 11 years ago got beat by Auburn in the regular season, and then they went on a run where they beat all these teams that had beaten them in the regular season to then get to the state championship. They ended up playing Hoover and got beat by Hoover, but they threw a touchdown pass with like 30 seconds left to beat Auburn in the third round of the playoffs. So big rivalry game there, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how that one goes. I'm going to visit with Coach Etheridge tomorrow,
and
so I'm looking forward to
that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
This next game is going to be Pell City. It's traveling to Oxford. Pell City has been competitive this year. They've definitely improved. I know everybody kind of just written them off because they've lost so many games. They're 1-4, 1-1 in the region, though.
Well, it's a lot better than last year.
100%. They're competing.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. Pell City started the season off with a loss. Somebody they didn't even have to schedule, Moody, 28-24. Then a 30-23 loss to Leeds. Then a 46-7 loss to Clay Chalkville. Then they beat Centerpoint 24-16. Then they lost to Eufaula last time out, 46-32. Oxford undefeated up until last week, and like I said, I'm not getting into the referees situation. We don't talk negative on here. We're not ever going to talk negative on here. If you want clickbait or you want argumentative stuff, we're not your guys. There's plenty of outlets out there in the state that does all of that. We're not going to be one of them. You go watch the tape. You make your own determination on that. Either way, I can tell you this because I just filmed his show just a few hours ago. Sam Adams is using it as a positive. It's kind of like a pressure valve. They release the pressure of an undefeated season.
Yeah.
Now they can go play football. And then, let me say this, we're going to move out of this game. After the debacle by another news outlet in this state that created this big story about when these two teams played over the summer in a 7-on-7, they act like this is pure hatred for these two staffs. None of that's true. All of it's fabricated. It was made up by one writer who wanted some clickbait material. He left out half the story and just mentioned one narrative that was mentioned that happened at an event, 7-on-7 event, and it's unfortunate for not only the guy who wrote it because it's embarrassing. It was unfortunate for Sam Adams. It was unfortunate for Rush Probst. It was unfortunate for Oxford High School and Pell City. Nobody wanted that.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted that. And I'm saying that, and I'm not calling any names. They know who they are. It's very poorly written, horrible. And none of it's true. None of it's true. And I actually visited with Rush this week, still in good spirits. I sat down, talked with him for just a few minutes. He was super busy coaching. I snapped some pictures and got out of there. They're still coaching their tails off. He still had them broke down in individual. You got two NFL guys and All-Americans who's won national championships out there on your coaching staff coaching with you and proven coaches all over the state. This is going to be a powerhouse in a few years. They just have not started out great this year. Next game, I don't know how to measure the amount of pressure that's in this next game.
On both sides.
On both sides. Yeah. But to me, I think the pressure is really on Piedmont. It's on both sides. Westbrook Christian is traveling to Piedmont. Coach Steve Smith is traveling back to where he went 198 and 30-something. I think I just did his post the other day about it, where he won 5 state championships, where he produced the state's all-time leading passer and scorer and passing yards leader, Jack Hayes, and all these great memories. But now he's going back to that place to play a football game just a few months after he coached him in the state championship game.
And against a team whose record does not show what they are.
100%.
I mean, I can just tell you after a while. I mean, you look at their schedule: Cherokee County, Sylvania, and then AHSAA and Anniston. That's their losses this year.
That's right.
We talked about Opelika's schedule and how tough it is. Piedmont has played as good a schedule as anybody, and really, I mean, who's competed with them that way?
Nobody.
Who's competed with them that way and held them to that many points?
That's
Nobody.
Right.
I mean, so I'm just telling. And Anniston only scored 14 on them this last week, and I saw the game, and Piedmont had every chance in the world to win the football game as well. So I'm just telling you, the 1-4 record does not show who this Piedmont team is under Coach Miller, and they're young, and they're going to keep getting better and better.
Yeah, and look, Steve Smith has Westbrook competing at a high level. Check this out. They beat St. John Paul's 42-27, then lost that barn burner crazy game to AHSAA 34-33, but then flipped right around and beat Glencoe 56-34, but then lost to Hopes Bluff in kind of a head scratcher. Not saying that because Hopes Bluff won, but it was the fashion. 47-21. But then they turn right back around and they blow section out 56-12. So, but man, imagine the pressure that's on Jonathan Miller's shoulders from the standpoint of they just went to the state championship game. It's his first year there. He's following Steve Smith. Steve Smith's across the field, and he's sitting here with a record of 1-4, 1-2 in the region. That's got to be a lot of pressure on you as a head coach. But like you said, people who don't get out there and grind and has never played football and just watch from the couch and stuff, they don't understand what it's like to have a young team, and they don't understand what all working hours and parts that goes into this. And as you said, look at who they've played. I mean, Sylvania is dominant. Cherokee County, I ain't got to touch on them. I mean, it's obvious. Then Anniston, who's a semifinalist in 4A last year. Then AHSAA, who's having a miraculous season. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even have to continue beating a dead horse, but you're right on that.
Oaks Bluff traveling to Plainview, big football game for both these programs. And really for Coach Pruitt, he's almost in must-win territory here, I think, with this game against Oaks Bluff. 1-2 in the region, you can't really afford to drop to 1-3 in the region. And it's a Oaks Bluff team who, really outside of Southside, they've played really, really good.
They're just pushing
this
people
season.
around up
Yeah, I mean, they are. And played really good against Geraldine as well. And so Southside's the only team that's really been able to handle them. They beat them 37-12. They then turned around and beat Glencoe 47-7. They lost that game to Geraldine, but 17-7. They competed really well with them. And that game, that was a time where Geraldine was killing everybody at that time.
Yeah, that was murdering people.
And that was before they played Sylvania. And then beat Westbrook 47-21 and White Plains 44-12. So very good Oaks Bluff team this year, and one that I think surprisingly their offense is what's been the biggest surprise. They've really gotten going, and you look at the game, when they've scored points, they've won. When they hadn't scored points, they've lost. And I mean, that's easy to say, but I'm saying they were held to 12-7 in their 2 losses. They've scored over 40 in all their wins. So they can get the offense going at Plainview. They've got as good a shot to win this ball game as any year. And for Plainview, I mean, this is must-win territory. You're 1-2 in the region. You're 2-3 overall. You can't fall to 2-4 and 1-3 in this region. And so I think you're going to get a Plainview team with Coach Pruitt that really going to go play hard on Friday night. And even though they lost 49-14 to Fife, they were in that game for a little bit, and I think that may also build some confidence in this group going forward. So interesting game at Plainview Friday night with Oaks Bluff, and a win for Oaks Bluff there puts them in fantastic position there in that region. John Carroll traveling to Pleasant Grove. If you'd have told me before the year we'd be talking about 5-0 John Carroll going into this game, I'd have thought you were crazy, but Coach Will Mara has done an unbelievable job
When's
there.
the last time they were 5-0?
It's early 2000s, maybe. I mean, it's been a long time.
I remember '95 they upset Etowah.
It's been a long, long time for John Carroll.
Yeah.
They're a sleeping giant, though. They're in a great area, right there in Homewood. They're a Catholic school. They can recruit. I mean, they just needed the right guy to get in there, and they've got him now. And Coach Will Mara, he was very successful.
They can't recruit.
They can.
They can.
What
players will want to come play for them.
Yeah, there you go. And they can go out of their way to accept players to come play for them.
Yeah.
So they're in a great position, and they got a guy there who won a lot with these guys in middle school. They then hired him as the head coach, and he's done a great job since taking over now at John Carroll, and he's kind of gotten them where they need to be. Here's the thing, though. They've beaten Homewood 36-31, which is a great win for them, a surprising win really to start the year. Beat Marbury 43-0, Fairfield 45-28, Hayden 44-6, and Carver Birmingham 43-26. The one thing that kind of stands out is when they've played teams with athletes, they've struggled defensively. Homewood scoring 31 points, Fairfield scoring 28, Carver Birmingham scoring 26. Well, they're getting a team this week that has got some athletes and can score a lot of points. And the only time that Pleasant Grove hadn't scored points this year is against Ramsey, and Ramsey's pretty good, and there were some things that happened in that football game that hurt Pleasant Grove that doesn't normally happen for them. Turnovers, things like that from quarterback position. But see what they did against Parker. This is a Parker defense. I talked with Coach Jackson from Ramsey today, and he talked about Parker's defense and how sound they were, and yet they were able to find a way to score more points than Parker last week and give Parker their first loss of the year. So this is a huge football game there in the Birmingham area, and it's one that if John Carroll can win, all of a sudden they set up a huge matchup with Ramsey. If Ramsey can get past Winona this week, therefore a region championship on down the line. So would be the biggest win for John Carroll, and I mean, I can't even tell you how long this win. I mean, maybe Homewood was maybe one of the biggest wins because it's a rivalry game. They're right up the road, and they kind of needed to get over that hump. But from a really making noise and putting yourself in position to be able to compete standpoint, this would be one of the biggest wins for John Carroll in a long time. So a huge game with Pleasant Grove, who kind of seems to, after that Ramsey game, be finding their footing a little bit. And maybe it kind of, when you lose a game and you face some adversity, you find out a lot about yourself, and I think they've maybe found out a lot about themselves now.
You listen in a little bit better at that next practice when you're running your guts out.
Yeah.
This next game's a monumental game up here.
Yeah.
In 5A in the same region with Douglas is 2-3, but they're 0-2 in the region. They're facing Sardis, who's 4-1, 0-1 in the region. Sardis, man, they are much improved this year. I went and watched them play last week. I actually sat in with B.J. Brooks, did his show Monday, and he talked about it, and I bragged on him a little bit. I said, normally Sardis gets down 14-7, they're packing it up, they're heading to the house. Somebody jumps out on them in the first half like they did and scores those 14 quick points like they did, it's over.
Yeah.
But what did this team do? They go in at halftime, they make the adjustments last week versus Brewer. They shut them out the second half, and they score 14 unanswered to win that game, 21-14 at home on homecoming, which was even bigger for them. Big time props, big props to the job that B.J. Brooks is doing at Sardis. But they're playing a team, and this group, check us out, these seniors have never beat Douglas. So this is going to be a monumental game for them. And the computers favor Sardis in this. They're a 15-point favorite in this game. Think about that.
And it's a Douglas team that could very easily be sitting at 4-1 right now.
Very easily. Also, so. Yeah, because if you look at their games right here, Douglas, they beat Susanmore 20-0, DAR 48-17. They lost to AHSAA in a very good football game, 21-14. And then,
that's the only one. I mean, that's what I'm saying. They could be 4-1.
Gunnersville, there's their one. Gunnersville's doing this to everybody. 56-14. And then West Point, 27-26 in the nail biter. So you're exactly right. They could very easily be 4-1 right now on the year. Take that Gunnersville game out, and I could see it the other way. So this is, I think that line's a little high, but kudos to B.J. Brooks to have people believing in them enough to put a line out there like that. So, that's good stuff for them. So they're definitely moving in the right direction. Next game, huge game. You want to host a playoff game? Win this football game right here.
I think it's the biggest game of Miles Holcomb's tenure at Southside Gadsden.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you for a couple of reasons. The first reason is he wins this game right now, it's his signature win.
Yeah.
And I mean signature win. This is Leeds, who's 4-1, 2-0 in the region, traveling to Southside, who's 5-1, 3-0 in the region. And the knock on Southside the last couple of years is they start out hot, and then they start tailing down the end. Well, if you look at their stretch run of games down the end, they close the last couple of years with Leeds, Moody, and Etowah.
Yeah.
So, of course, you're probably going to lose some of those games. But
and Boaz in there as well.
Nobody jumps out there and says, I got you. Nobody jumps out there and says, hey, if we don't handle business on the front end, we're not even in position to talk about the back end. So last week they come from behind and they was down 14 points late, and I'm talking late. They get the stops they need and they go on to win the game against Boaz in a shootout, 48-45 in overtime. And I'm talking about a flat-out shootout. So again, they don't execute on the front end of the schedule. You don't even got to worry about them losing. But now, here's the difference. Same situation last year, they going on the road to Leeds. This year, they got Leeds at home. Now, this is a dominant Leeds team from a defensive standpoint. Leeds has played a tough schedule themselves. Listen to this. They lost to Montgomery Jordan 31-28, beat Pell City 30-23, beat Springville 23-7, beat St. Clair 34-0, and then went on to beat Sylacauga 48-14. So they have pretty much dominated everybody outside of Montgomery Jordan, and Pell City fought their guts out, played their guts out.
And I think Mortimer Jordan surprised Leeds.
Oh, yeah.
Because they dominated Mortimer Jordan last year, and then I think that Leeds kind of thought, hey, we'll just same team. Yeah, I mean, you don't know. It's first game of the year. And
kudos to that Montgomery Jordan team because they went on a big Gardendale.
Yeah, they've gone on to have a pretty good year outside of one game against Parker.
Check this out from Southside now. Their one loss was to Gunnersville early, and it was only by 4 points.
And they held them to 14.
They held Gunnersville to 14. And then they went and beat Hoax Bluff like nobody's beat Hoax Bluff this year, 37-12. But then flipped it back around, and they got Lincoln 29-8. Then they got Springville 35-21, St. Clair County 42-13, and then the pre-mentioned Boaz 48-45 game. So this could be Miles Holcomb's signature win. But let me tell you this, and I'm out of this game. Kavion Henderson, got to find him, got to block him. Jordan Bryan's a new quarterback at Southside. Got to give him time to throw. Got to let Mason Teague, you've got to give him lanes to run in. Everybody in the brother is going to key on Mason Teague. Christian Berg is the defensive end opposite Kavion Henderson, who is a run-stopping big defensive end himself, who's almost unblockable.
Yeah.
And then Leeds, you got to circle Connor Nelson. He'll play wide receiver. He'll play quarterback for him. He's a little bit of everything. He's Keith Etheridge's nephew. Got to circle Connor Nelson. He is a playmaker for Leeds and will be the X factor for them offensively in this game.
Yeah, I think what you said, though, is going to be where that game's won, and it's going to be up front. If they can handle their defensive front, Southside's going to have a chance to score some points and be in the ball game. If they can't block those two, it's going to be a long, long night. And
that's correct.
Matthew Cherry commented, he said Leeds going to blow out Southside. Leeds is hot right now. Matthew, I agree. They're hot. They've won 34-0 and 48-14. Go tell me how many wins St. Clair County and Sylacauga has over the last 2 years. So, I mean, they've got to do it against somebody that's pretty good, and we're going to find out this week. Moody traveling to Springville. Moody 5-1, 3-1 in the region. Springville 2-4, 1-2 in the region. Look, this is a Springville team that's very, very improved this year, and you can tell by the scores. They really surprised us when they beat Etowah to start the year. Competed very well with Mortimer Jordan the week after Mortimer Jordan went and beat Leeds 35-28. Then they lost 23-7 to Leeds. Lost 35-21 to a good Southside team. They beat Alexandria, and they lost to Aniana last week. Springville's played a really tough schedule, but they've been in every ball game. There's no blowouts in there. They've been in every single game. They've given them a chance, which for Springville is a very good step in the right direction from what they've been over the last couple of years. So, big game here. Can you compete with Moody? Moody has kind of really gotten going here towards the end. I think they played a really tough game with Bishop McNamara out of Maryland, and I think something about that game has kind of helped them click a little bit, because you look at the last couple of weeks and they've played extremely well. They beat Lincoln 28-3 when Lincoln was really rolling and had a lot of momentum going into that game, and they dominated Shelby County 49-6. This past week as well, they beat Alexandria 42-7, Sylacauga 31-17, and then obviously the game with Pell City to start the year at 28-24. So it's a very good Moody team. Their only loss is to a team out of the state, and for Springville, this is a big opportunity. If you can get a win here, it's really going to turn a lot of heads, and I think it could change Springville's season going forward as well.
Oh, ain't no doubt. Last game for me, then we're stepping out and letting Mr. Reginald Davis step in here and do the games of the week. The Watkins heating and cooling games of the week, Mr. Reginald. Pisgah. What else can I say about Pisgah? They're 5-0, 3-0 in region play. Last week, went on the road to, I thought, an unbeatable Sylvania team. I didn't think somebody's going to beat Sylvania after what I seen them do to Geraldine.
Exactly.
But I was wrong. Luke Pruitt and company goes on the road to Sylvania. They pull out a 40-34 victory at Sylvania. Unbelievable win for Luke Pruitt. Signature win. To me, I think this was a bigger win. Maybe not from, I think it's a bigger win than the Aliceville win last year in the playoffs. Both are huge.
No, I would agree with you.
I think this is bigger. Just because what I've seen from Sylvania. Check this out. Then I'm getting out. Whitesburg Christian's 0-5, 0-3 in the region. Not a whole bunch to talk about. They've been outscored 188-53 on the year. But listen to these games. Listen to what I'm about to tell you from Pisgah. Beat Lexington 42-27.
Good win.
Sandrock 50-7. I was at that one. Collinsville 66-13. This is a good Collinsville team. I was at that one. It wasn't close. Ider 46-13. Then Sylvania 40-34. They're on a roll. Whitesboro Christian, buckle your chin strap. This is going to be a very tall task to beat this particular Pisgah team at this time.
No doubt. And then Ryan McElwain just commented, we didn't have this on our sheet, but you are right, Ryan. Big game in 1A South. Sweetwater at Linden. Linden, we've seen them compete for a state championship here recently. We saw Sweetwater just a couple of years ago in Birmingham. So big game there in 1A South, and really looking forward to that one on Friday night as well there with Sweetwater and Linden. And look, if there's some other games that we didn't cover that you guys have been watching and wanting to hear, comment on here, tell us. We'll see it. We'll talk about it. We try to write down what we think some of the biggest games. We have to cut some out. We can't talk about all 100 and whatever games that are going on.
We try to keep it for sure Montgomery-ish up.
Yeah. So, but hey, look, we're trying to expand our coverage, and in the future, hopefully we can keep going down, talk a lot more about these Mobile games and games around the Dothan area, all those games as well. And so, if there's something that you wanted to hear us talk about, comment on here, let us know. And we'd love to talk about it. But you're right there, Ryan. A huge game there between Sweetwater and Linden there in 1A. It's going to tell us a lot about 1A right down there in the south as well. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we will have our Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week with Reggie Davis and Reginald Davis. So we'll have our Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week. Stay tuned right here. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back in. Road to the Blue Map presented by Rojo Go Vacation Rentals. If you're looking to vacation up around the Gunnersville, Gadsden, Northeast Alabama area, which I'm telling you, if you hadn't been up here, if you're from other parts of the state, the Gunnersville area is one of the most underrated areas in this whole entire state. So make sure to look to come up here at some point, come visit the lake. You got the mountains up here all around as well. But look to Rojo Go Vacation Rentals. They can point you in the right direction on wherever you want to stay, wherever you want to vacation at. We appreciate their support, and it's now time for the Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week. We want to thank Brad Watkins and his support for us here, right here with Road to the Blue Map each week, giving us these 5 games to break down, talk about biggest 5 games that we think of the week. If there's some others on there, you can let us know. We did have a comment on here, B.B. Comer against Isabella. There ain't much to talk about with the game itself. I don't see a team right now that's going to touch B.B. Comer.
Yeah, they're tough.
Houston, so... B.B. Comer's really good. What they did to Vincent was extremely impressive. Had another big win this past week, and there's not many 2As that can spread you out offensively the way they can, and then not only can they spread you out, they can then hand it to a 230-pound beast at running back, and then all those guys turn around and play extremely well on the defensive side of the ball as well. And so I look for B.B. Comer to go and take care of business against Isabella, and man, Comer, they're the favorites in 2A right now. There's not much else to say. Yeah, so. But again, thanks to Brad Watkins, Watkins Heating and Cooling. If you're up here in Northeast Alabama, look, it's getting that time of year. We can already feel it right now. I saw this weekend the high 71 Saturday. Then it's going to jump back up to 80-something next week, and then it's going to be back down to a high of like 68 next weekend. So,
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, that's my type of weather.
But you better have your heating and cooling unit ready to go to handle all that, because you're going to be sitting there flipping that thermostat left and right. And so Brad Watkins with Watkins Heating and Cooling, you can see his number right there on the screen. You can find their website. Make sure to check them out. They're on Facebook as well. And they're who you need to look to for your heating and cooling needs going forward. Big games this week, Reggie.
Yes, sir.
The one that we're going to start off with is a huge game up here. And it's one that I think Collinsville has been very, very hungry for since that Pisgah game earlier this season, where they obviously don't feel like they played their best game. But Fife at Collinsville. Talk about this one, how big this game is up here this weekend.
This game is huge. You know, as you were talking about in 2A, B.B. Comer being a favorite in 2A, these two teams might have something to say about that coming out of the north. You know, Fife and Collinsville is a huge matchup in DeKalb County. These two towns are just a few miles apart from each other. You know, like you said, Collinsville lost that game to Pisgah earlier this year. Fife lost the game to Geraldine, which is something they don't do very often. And ever since Fife lost that game, I mean, look at their scores. They've been on a roll. They lost that game 17-6 to Geraldine. Then they come back and beat North Sand Mountain 53-0. Whitesburg Christian 54-0. Section 63-0. And Plainview got a few points on the board, but they still beat them 49-14 last week. So Fife's coming out saying, hey, you know what? This is not like us. We don't like losing. We're going to get back to playing Fife football. And Collinsville, on the flip side, Collinsville, like you said, they're hungry for this game. They feel like they have the team to compete with Fife this year and possibly upset them, which I wouldn't really call it an upset because, I mean, Collinsville has been beating some people this year outside of that Pisgah game. You know, they started the year off beating Galesville 47-0, and they beat Section 39-6, and they lost that Pisgah game 66-13. But then they bounced back and beat Sand Rock 59-14, and Gadsden last week 47-0. You know, they're outscoring their opponents 205-86, and the 86 points that's been scored on Collinsville, Pisgah has 66 of them.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a huge matchup in DeKalb County. This was one of the games I kind of wanted as the game of the week, but, you know, I had to put it in because, I mean, you can't get any better than Fife and Collinsville.
No doubt about it. One that's not really up here in our area, but is a huge football game in 4A. You got Escambia County traveling to Jackson on Friday night. Look, Jackson's a team. We talk about Hanley. We talk about, you know, Andalusia and Catholic, Anniston, Jacksonville.
Right.
Well, Jackson's another one of those teams. Bibb County's in there now. Jackson's another one of those teams that has a chance to really make a lot of noise in 4A, but they got to get by a really good Escambia County team this weekend.
Yes, sir. You know, I chose this game this week because we've got a guy that comes in every week. He tells us, hey, y'all need to look at Jackson. Hey, look at Jackson. And I go back and look at their scores. I mean, hey, they're rolling, man. Yeah. I mean, they started the year off beating Demopolis 35-7. And if you know Demopolis, they're a pretty good, solid 5A team. And, you know, they go and beat them 35-7 to start the year out. And then they come back and beat Orange Beach 50-2, TR Miller 38-7. Bayside Academy, 35-0. Coach Cody Flournoy, I hope I said his last name right. He's in his 5th season at Jackson, and he's got a 35-17 record. You know, most people that know, he came in and took over after Danny Powell retired from Jackson. And, you know, Danny Powell had a very good run at Jackson. I think he won a state championship while he was there. But on the flip side, you got Escambia County. These guys have had a pretty good year. Coach Vincent Harris is in his 2nd year at Escambia, and they're coming off a 4-6 season in 2022. But this year, they've come out hot. You know, they started the year off beating College Hill Christian 20-9, Northview out of Florida 26-14, Satsuma 46-6, and their only loss is to St. Michael 41-26, and then they beat Wilcox Central 41-20 and Monroe County 41-6. So this should be a very good game and go a long way in determining some region standings for that region.
No doubt about it. And that's a Philip Rivers coach, St. Michael's team.
St. Michael's
as well.
team, I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
There's a reason why they're not too bad. They got his son playing quarterback who's only a 9th grader, and the guy can sling it. So we got another Rivers up on the way, and I think he's the oldest. I mean, because he's got, what, like 12 or 13 kids?
Yeah, he's got a lot of kids.
And I don't even know if he's done. So, well, Reggie, I'll be doing this game on Thursday night at Legion Field. I'm really looking forward to being. We're going to actually be at Legion Field. I'll get to call it from the booth up there, which I'm really looking forward to, and just being there at a historical place. But Winona at Ramsey. Look, what Ramsey's done this year is fantastic for Winona, though. 5-1 coming into this.
Yeah.
This is a huge game for Winona, and it's one that, you know, they played Pleasant Grove a couple weeks ago. They were in the game with Pleasant Grove, and you know, had their opportunities in that one. And to me, just the fact they played them 35-21 really kind of show, okay, Winona is for real this year. And they actually have turned it around and gotten back to being what we expect Winona to be.
Yep.
This is one statewide stage Thursday night. There's not many other big games on Thursday night. A lot of people are going to be tuning in. You know, there's no Thompson Clay Chalkfall on ESPN to pull any viewers away from it.
Right.
I think a lot of people are going to be tuned into this game between Winona and Ramsey. And if Winona can get a win here over the defending 5A state champs, who competed really well with Parker, and then competed really well with Auburn High School this past week.
That would be huge.
It's going to really change, I think, how a lot of people think of 5A going forward.
Right. You know, Winona, people look at Birmingham City School football and they say, okay, for a while, you know, they didn't have the strongest teams, but things are changing in the Birmingham City School system. You know, you got the Parkers, you got the Ramseys, and now you got Winona, you know, kind of coming back into the picture. It's like, okay, Birmingham football is pretty good, you know. Yeah. Things are getting better down there. And this game is really huge for Winona. You know, I think it could really, if they pull this game out, it could really change things in that program overall.
Yeah.
You know, who knows what could happen. You know, I remember back in the 90s when Winona was one of the top 5A teams in the state. You know, they knocked us out of the playoffs in '95, my freshman year.
Year out.
Yeah. You know, and we went down there, you know, with Coach DiLorenzo. I think we lost by 5 in a monsoon, but I mean, they were good, you know. And it's nice to see them back. And you know, they started the year out, you know, with a win over Sylacauga, 37-7, midfield 39-0, and like you said, they lost that game to Pleasant Grove, 35-21. And they bounced back and beat Carver 19-14 and Jasper 33-0. And last week they beat Holt in a non-region game 54-0.
They ain't giving up a point in 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, so they're rolling right now, you know. And the thing, this is a huge region game for both teams because now, you know, you've got a tight region race with John Carroll, Ramsey, and Pleasant Grove. So this game has a lot of implications. So, you know, the winner of this game is going to have a heads up on winning this region. So, I mean, I don't know. I will be watching this game Thursday night. And Ramsey, you know, they started the year off with that win against Hueytown, which is a very good 6A program. And they lost to Parker, a very good Parker team, by 3. And they come back and beat Jasper 65-6, and they lose to Pleasant Grove. They beat Pleasant Grove, 49-17, and then they beat Fairfield 28-15, and they had that really close loss to Auburn last week, which tells me Ramsey is still in it. They're still in the hunt for 5A. So I'm looking forward to this game and can't wait to see how it's going to turn out.
And according to Coach Jackson at Ramsey, he said they kind of really hurt themselves offensively. He said, no disrespect to Auburn, they've got a really good defense, and there's a reason that they got held to 7, but that they really did some things that hurt themselves, that if they don't commit those errors, they score a little bit more and during that game. And he said Auburn only crossed the 54 times the whole game. They got 2 field goals, missed a field goal, and then scored a touchdown. But, you know, Auburn's got maybe the best field goal kicker in the whole entire state. I mean, we're talking about a guy that can make them from 55, 60 already in high school.
And I think Ramsey was winning that game 7-6 at one point, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, hey, Ramsey's the team to look out for, but, you know, Winona can pull this one off Thursday night.
And the thing is, for Winona, Ramsey's coming off of a huge game with Auburn where it was emotional. You're playing a 7A. You're trying to go get out. Well, now maybe Winona can get them in a short week for Ramsey as well. Maybe get them kind of overlooking them or still looking back on that game with Auburn. And so I think, you know, Winona kind of gets them in a really good spot here, which is good for them.
You're right.
Next football game's a big one up here in Northeast Alabama. Scottsboro traveling to Guntersville. Are we setting the over-under at 95, 100?
Well, I mean, really?
Is that what we're doing here? I mean, because there's going to be a lot of points scored. I'll be shocked if there's not, but it should be a very fun game to watch if you're at it because there's going to be points scored in 2 different ways.
Right.
You're going to have Scottsboro lining up in the triple option, trying to just ram it down your throat, and then you've got Guntersville on the other side, who's going to spread you out, chunk it all over the field. They're going to, you know, they can run the ball really well, but it's the fact they can spread you out. They can chunk it around that opens up everything. So it's going to be 2 teams that score points in different ways. You know, look, we saw Fort Payne have a lot of success spreading Scottsboro out in the second half, throwing the football around. So now can Lance Reese and his group repeat the same thing there on Friday night against Scottsboro? The biggest thing for Guntersville, they get them at home.
Right.
So, you know, look, this is a huge game here for Coach Bell and Scottsboro. I mean, it may be the biggest game for Coach Bell in his tenure at Scottsboro so far.
I agree because, you know, when he got to Scottsboro, you know, things were not going so well. And he has slowly over the years he installed that offense that he ran at.
They bought into this offense.
They bought into it, and they're doing a lot of great things at Scottsboro. And now things are rolling the way he wants, the way he had it at Oak Mountain. Because, you know, watching Oak Mountain, I mean, it was like watching that offense. It was like watching, you know, art. I mean, it was great.
Well, look at them over the last couple of years and how they hadn't been in games. They were in games with Coach Bell.
Exactly.
You know, and at least going 5-5, 6-4, and things like that.
You know, this is another game I really debated on having this as the game of the week. Because this is going to be a huge game up here in Marshall County. I know Short-Belize Stadium is going to be jam-packed Friday night, and these two teams have been rivals for a while. They're not very far from each other. You know, Scottsboro's coming in. They're the 5th highest scoring team in the state, and like you said, they're averaging 49.5 points in a game.
And Guntersville would be up there if they didn't have that 14-10 game from Southside. Otherwise, they'd be in that same mix.
Because Guntersville, you know, after that Southside game, they won that game 14-10. They beat Lawrence County 41-7, Douglas 56-14, Boaz 35-14, Buckhorn, 7A Buckhorn, 38-7. And, this is and one thing I noticed about this game, this is going to be a matchup of Gunnersville's defensive line versus Scottsboro's offensive line. Who's going to dominate the line up front and win this ball game for their team? That's going to be the main question in this ball game. And another thing, this game is probably going to determine the region champion, or at least have home field advantage, because you got Sardis sitting out in the wings. Nobody really knows how the last half of the season is going to go for them. So
and you still got Arab sitting.
And Arab, can't forget about Arab. So this region is actually a pretty good region. Scottsboro, like we said, averaging 49.5 points a game. Beat Fort Payne 56-51, North Jackson 44-15. Boaz 63-38, Arab 28-14, and Priceville 56-21. So this is going to be a high-scoring game and probably one of the better matchups in the state Friday night.
Yeah, and I think the win over Arab was huge because they struggled early in that game. They didn't have it as much offensively. Arab played the triple option really well, and in a low-scoring game, they still found a way to win. And I think for a team, that goes a long way in showing, hey, even on a night where we maybe don't have it on offense, we can still pick it up defensively, get some style. And they're getting better defensively as the year goes on. The scores will kind of show you that. So,
exactly.
That's going to be a fun game Friday night. I'm looking forward to this one. All right, it's time for our Watkins Heating and Cooling Game of the Week. And this is a huge one in 7A. And, look, you're getting a Thompson team who is coming off of their first loss of the season. They lost to a 6A Clay Chalkbowl. It was heartbreaking. They almost came back at the end. They missed a field goal to tie the game. They had a chance to tie the game.
Yeah, they recovered the onside kick, and they were trying to get in the field goal range to tie the game and take it to overtime, and they missed it.
Yeah. I mean, you're coming off a lot of emotions with how that game went this past week. Great chance for Hewitt Trustful. You get them at home. You've been rolling here lately. Your only slip up of the year is to maybe the best team in 7A in Phoenix City. This is a big one on Friday night. Thompson going to Hewitt, and if Hewitt gets a win, it's kind of what we talked. Me and Bo talked about earlier with Dothan. If they can beat Phoenix City, you've got two big matchups in the two biggest regions in 7A.
Right.
If Dothan can beat Phoenix City and Hewitt beat Thompson, all of a sudden the way you look at 7A is really shifting.
There's going to be a change of the guard in 7A because I know people are.
You still got to do it in the postseason.
Because
I mean,
going to have some
more
rematches.
than likely this rematch may happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it would really change how we think of the 7A in both South and North.
Oh, definitely. Like you said, Thompson had lost that game in probably one of the best high school games I've seen so far this season.
Saraland and Lipscomb's up there too.
Yeah, Saraland and Lipscomb. I mean, that was a really good game. And I was sitting on the edge of my seat watching this game. Sorry I didn't watch your game last week. I watched a little bit, but
I was watching that game too. So.
I mean, so this was a good one. But Thompson, they're not a slouch. There's not time to hit the panic button. Things are still fine. They beat Opelika to start the season, a really good Opelika team to start the season, 44-13, and Vestavia Hills 21-3, which that game's a lot closer than that score.
And that win's looking a lot more impressive too.
Yeah, it is. It is because Vestavia Hills is looking good. They beat Spain Park 55-14. Chelsea.
That was a big win too because Spain Park was playing extremely well at that time. They had just barely lost to Hoover.
I agree. And then they beat Chelsea 45-0 before that loss to Clay Chalkville last week. Like I said, this could possibly be the biggest game on Thompson's schedule, because a lot is riding on this game. Here at Trussville for the last several years, they've been trying to get by Hoover. They've been trying to get by Thompson. Those have been the two biggest hurdles in that 7A Region 3. It's one of those two teams, 1 and 2, and then Trussville's third. And they say, you know what, we're tired. Coach Floyd didn't move here from Arkansas to finish third in that region every year. So this is a year, that he can finally say, you know what, we beat Hoover, check. Thompson, you're next, So I'm looking forward to this game. I can't wait to see how it turns out. Trussville, they've put up some points this year too. Like I said, they lost that first game to Central Phoenix City, 48-28. Then they beat a pretty good Gadsden City team, 42-27. Then they go beat Oak Mountain 42-7, Tuscaloosa County 42-7, and they beat Hoover, which again I said that was a game they've been trying to give them that hump for a few years now. And then they beat Huffman 62-0 last week. So looking forward to this one and seeing how it's going to turn out. And Yeah,
No, I mean, that should be a fun game.
it should be.
Yeah, and biggest thing is, for Thompson, it was surprising to see them give up 36 last week.
Yeah.
Because you look at the rest of their scores, 13 to Opelika, 3 to Vestavia,
Yeah.
14 to Spain
Spain
Park,
Park.
and 0 to Chelsea, and then all of a sudden you have Clay Chalk go for 36, but you also had Jalen and Bachway
Bachway,
play quarterback
I mean,
on the other
oh,
side.
man.
And
He's a stud, man.
him doing what he did, single-handedly beating Thompson, also changed the way you think of 6A now, because it kind
Yeah.
of looked like, hey, we want to see Clay Chalk on Saraland, but Saraland would be the favorite going in. All of a sudden last week kind of said, maybe this Clay Chalk team could beat Saraland and score some points on
That
them,
was
'cause-
really my thought. I
yeah.
was like, wait a minute now.
Saraland, outside of the Lipscomb game, hadn't given up any points
No,
this year
they
either.
haven't.
So,
They
and then
haven't.
we talked about earlier, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa is another team that can get in there. 6A is going to be fun.
It's gonna be a lot of
So,
fun.
but that's going to be a huge game. Thompson at Hewitt-Trussville on Friday night, and so that does it for your Watkins Heating and Cooling games of the week, and that does it for us right here on Average Joe's Sports Talk. Again, thank you to Rojo Go Vacation Rentals for their sponsorship of this episode of Road to the Blue Map, our 7th episode of the year, 6th week of the season right here, which is, I mean, it flies by. I know we talk about it, but it's been a fun one here, and we'll be back Saturday. We'll have our Saturday morning recap show. Myself, Bo Starkey, Corey LaBounty will be on there. We'll break down all the scores from Thursday and Friday night and recapping a very fun week of games, and I look forward to talking about these games with those guys. So for Bo Starkey, Reggie Davis, I'm Caleb Brooks.